and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're presented by The Athletic and CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Reags from over at Barstool. We're going to talk about everything that happened in college basketball over the course of the last week. If you hadn't noticed, I wasn't necessarily around last week. I released a couple of podcasts. We talked to Pete Philo about scouting in the NBA. We talked to Fred Katz about the rest of the Northwest Division, but I wasn't around to do like a full stop breakdown of all of this stuff as it happened on Wednesday, as it happened on, Tuesday. The reason for that was I was on vacation last week. I was in Playa del Carmen, Mexico with my girlfriend, who was quickly getting frustrated with the amount that I was on my phone while I was supposed to be relaxing and not thinking about work. Because if you guys have noticed by the amount of content I put out, I'm someone who tends to just focus all on work and not enough on other things like relaxation. So I was trying hard to stay away from it until I got back this week. But, some of the stuff like tweeting and, everything I was happy to do. Reags, how's it going first and foremost? Before we get into the, college basketball side of things, you also stayed at like a all-inclusive resort in Mexico for your honeymoon, I believe. What were your impressions of it?
I was in St. Lucia.
Ah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, I was in St. Lucia. But I was also trying to not be on my phone, and that was the week Thad Matta got fired.
Yeah, it's just like so hard whenever like news breaks and
the worst part was so my phone, for whatever reason, when we first got there, like my wife and I had the same we're on the same plan, like we have the same phones, everything like that. For whatever reason, mine wasn't connecting to the internet. Mm-hmm. So I was like, whatever, I'm just going to throw it in the safe. I'm not that worried about it. My laptop, like if I wake up early, I'll just check it or check anything serious going on.
Yeah.
So we had the TV on, or we were sitting at one of the bars with the TV on, and there it was like ESPN Venezuela is the one that they picked up for in St. Lucia. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is super slow. And all I saw was NCAA has been relieved of his duties. And I'm sitting there going, all right, what just happened? Because I had no idea. It didn't say like Ohio State. It didn't say. It just said NCAA coach relieved of duties. And I'm going, well, this could be anybody. And finally, and they had a super slow bottom line. Like I was sitting there, I was like, well, just give me 5 minutes. Like it'll be back up in a minute or two. It never came back up. So I was like, who the hell got fired? So I'm like sitting there trying to figure that out. So it's always something always happens when you go on vacation. It's impossible not to go somewhere and news not break. It's just impossible.
And then obviously this week it ends up being like one of the biggest college basketball stories. Yeah. What were your impressions of staying at a resort like that? Because that was the first time I'd ever done one like that. I had mixed thoughts, I guess. But what were your thoughts before we get into it?
I mean, I loved it strictly because I could go get whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. It's nice not having the hassle of like having your wallet on you and being like, okay, well, what are we going to spend this week or anything like that? It's like, well, we know what we're spending.
Yeah.
And then you can just do whatever you want. Like if you want to drink all day, you can drink all day. If you want to eat all day, you can eat all day, and it costs the same as if you do nothing. So I like that aspect of it. It is weird, though, at the same time. It takes a while to get back in the rotation of being like, no, I need to carry my wallet and actually pay for stuff.
Yeah, I know. We thought that, too. We thought it was just, like, the best thing in the world to just, have my phone on me and have my Kindle on me and, maybe once every hour look at the internet and then just read the rest of the time. I read, like, 4 or 5 books while I was there, out on the beach. It was great. We also had this really nice pool with like a walk-up bar inside the pool. That was great.
Yeah, that's what we had. We had a swim-up bar at 2 of the pools at our resort. And I, like, my good friend in Cincinnati, him and his wife have a pool in their backyard. And I was like, all right, how much money do we all need to pitch in to make like a margarita machine like out on your patio of the pool?
That's the move, man. So, yeah, we did all that. The thing that I think we were least impressed with was the food, I guess. The food we thought was very average. They almost catered too much to Americans, I thought. Like, the breakfast was really good because American breakfast is just amazing. But,
did you have different themes? Was it like an Italian restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, whatever?
Well, they didn't have a Mexican restaurant first, which was a little bit weird.
Right.
They had like a seafood place, an Italian place, a really bad steakhouse. They had a Japanese like thing, like a
hibachi. I saw your snap of that one. Yeah. Yeah,
like a hibachi grill. That was average. The guy that was there, he was probably the worst hibachi chef I'd seen. Like, it was fine, like he was doing it, but it was a very simple routine for those. Like, some of those like places you go and it's wild. Like, you see like all kind of crazy shit happening. This one was not like that. The food was okay there too. It wasn't like amazing. I think that was probably the biggest disappointment for me though. Like, service down there, it wasn't great, but it's just a different vibe down there in terms of service. Like, people don't necessarily go out of your way to make you feel comfortable and make you feel like, you have to tip them like a heavy amount by the time they're done like servicing you. It's just a totally different vibe. There was some like negative stuff that was, a little bit bothersome to me, but it's just a different vibe. Like I said there.
See, we had the complete opposite because St. Lucia tourism is number one. So it's like, we were talking to like people that went into the city one day after a tour. Our tour guide the day after was like, had room for like 6 couples to go to a street party, like a weekly street party, like a half hour away. So we were talking to him, getting to kind of know him a little bit better. And he said like the most desirable jobs are those on the island or like on the resort.
Interesting.
Like it's like manager, then bartender, and then server, and then, bar back, and then whatever. But like, because they take care of them. Like, you always have a job because people are always going there.
Yeah.
It's not like there's an off season, especially in St. Lucia, where it's pretty much the same weather every month of the year.
Yep.
The thing was, the food there was phenomenal.
Yeah. What did you guys have?
So there was a sushi place, which was unbelievable. Hibachi, which was good. There was an Italian place, which was good. Like, we didn't have any bad. There was a French restaurant, which we were supposed to go to, but we got too drunk during the day and didn't make the reservation.
Good for you.
I did order chicken cordon bleu to my room, though, so that was good.
Yeah,
and then
the room service was really good. 24-hour room service was nice.
Yep. We had a Caribbean, a true St. Lucian restaurant, like a lot of like the native food type thing, and then there was what was the other one? Like a seafood Mediterranean, Caribbean type feel to it. So we had and then there's a British sports pub. So we had a little bit of everything.
Oh man, you guys had a better spot than I did for sure.
Yeah, and those the pub was great because I remember one night, like a day we were drinking, like all day drinking and everything like that. I was like, I want a late night snack, so I went up and got wings from you could just get wings and bring them back to your room. So that was clutch. I'm a huge wings guy.
Just getting fucking waffled and eating wings at like whatever. Yeah, man.
The best was, so we were at a Sandals and we did the butler service because we were like, screw it. Like, it's the one time, it's a honeymoon. We're doing it. Like, why not at this point?
Yeah.
So the butler, like, he would do things like in the bedroom, like put like rose petals on the bed and write sweet notes out and things like that. So we get home that night and it was like the second or third night we were there. And my wife was like, oh my God, you gotta come up and look at this. And he did like rose petals and like Love My Wife or anything like that. Had music playing. And I'm shirtless with just wings all over me. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I just ruined this whole thing, huh?
Oh, my God. Let's talk about college basketball and end it on just shirtless Reags with, wings all over him.
Great hot wings.
So, this week, this news breaks. And, Lamont Evans, Book Richardson, Chuck Person, and why is the fourth one escaping me right now?
Who is the fourth one? Who are we missing? Richardson, Evans. Oh, Tony Bland.
Tony Bland at UFC. Yeah. How the hell did I forget Tony out here at UFC? Yeah. So they all end up getting arrested for what is essentially being framed as, I guess, a bribing scandal where it's really just pay for play. And, yeah. And the way this is, like, a lot of the questions are, why is this illegal? It's because they're working for institutions that get public funding. Is that correct? And
that and the way that I read it too, in terms of like lying about what they were steering them to.
Right. That's the big thing. Like, a lot of it is like they aren't giving the kids all of the proper information. They're specifically misleading them, which makes it fraud as opposed to just like a different deal.
And adds in the corruption charges too, I believe, are tied with that.
Right. And I think I'm going to try and get like an actual lawyer on the podcast at some point this week just to talk to them and, kind of understand a little bit more about this. But like,
yeah, I learned people think way too highly of my intelligence when this was breaking.
Yeah.
Like, ask me, I'm like, dude, I graduated with a journalism degree. Like, I can do bird law. So I just kept saying, like, I can make up rules.
Yeah, you like Charlie Kelly are an expert in bird law.
Right. I do feel like an expert in this now. Like, between reading all the affidavits and the watching the press conferences, I was like, I feel like I could go like into a courtroom right now and either argue for or against like people going against these charges.
Yeah. So overall, what is your kind of feeling on all of this? And I don't mean like in terms of, NCAA sanctions and the way all that should work, but like, how do you feel about the NCAA or the federal government trying to crack down on this stuff and trying to make a point of this?
I mean, I get it. Like, that's their job.
I totally agree. It's their job, but
right. I think they're in a hard spot because people are going to look at the FBI in a way being like, well, why are you messing with this? And it's like, well, what do you want them to do? Like, they can't just turn a blind eye to something that is illegal.
Right.
And it seems so weird because it is to a degree of victimless crime. Like,
I don't know that that's true, but continue.
Well, that's why I said to a degree, because it is like you mentioned the pay for play. Like, the players are definitely the victims here in the sense of they're getting steered the wrong way and everything like that. But it's not like, an assault or something like that where you can point at a guy and be like, that's the victim.
Right. Right. Like the way it could be framed is like, this is a situation where these kids know what they're signing up for as they, get money. I think part of the issue with that statement is that they don't know what they're signing up for because, as we saw within the Chuck Person affidavit specifically, Person was, according to these phone calls and records, just lying to these kids about like who he knows and how he can help them. So
and they trust him. So it's like, how are they supposed to do it? Like, they'd be like me going to a mentor and being like, hey, what do you think of this?
Right.
And being like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I mean, you're my mentor.
Right, exactly. So that part of it is fucked up. And I think that part of it makes it morally just reprehensible. What I will say is this, like, there's been a lot of discussion about, like, why journalists haven't, like, broken this story in the past. Well, I mean, first and foremost, let's throw out the real reason why this hasn't happened. It's because
we're not the FBI.
Yeah, we're not the FBI.
We don't have wire
testimony. We don't have wire, like, the wire setups here where we can tap phones and everything like that. Because really, the only way to do this is to either get someone to roll and get them to go on the record and talk to you about everything that's happening, which in these cases, there's no real reason for someone to do that because there's just too much money at stake. And number two,
you stumble ass backwards into it.
Right.
You randomly find something. You're like, wait a minute.
But even then, if you stumble ass backwards into it, it's really hard to get the evidence to back up stumbling ass backwards into it. You know what I mean? Like, it's
impossible.
Yeah, this is one of those things that is nearly impossible to break. The second part of this is, and I'll be like honest here, like, I've never chased a story like this. And by that I mean I've never tried to chase a story like this. And the reason
I don't even know how you would start.
Well, how you would start is you would go to, people around agents and talk to them and, runners and see if someone has had a bad experience with an agent and wants to roll. Or you essentially have to find the third parties who are willing to roll and talk.
The other thing is I don't know why you'd want to. Like, that's the other thing. Most journalists don't want to do this stuff because most sources are tied to these people that are being investigated.
Well, that part of it doesn't necessarily bother me from a journalistic perspective. The part that bothers me and why I've never chased one of these is because, I've heard many different things over the course of the years that I've been doing this. The reason that I haven't reported this is that the end of the day, or tried to report it out, at the end of the day, like, I look at it as who is going to get hurt the most by something like this. The kid is going to get suspended and thrown out of school. Like, probably not thrown out of school, but he'll get thrown off the team and won't be able to play college basketball again.
Ineligible,
and
right. Fall in the draft, probably.
Right, fall in the draft. He probably won't be able to help himself. And to me, that isn't, like, I don't want to, I think that, like, the core tenet of journalism in a lot of ways is, you know, do no harm and do the least amount of harm that you can to those who are vulnerable, right?
Yep.
And to me, it's always been that the most vulnerable victim here is the kid if someone is to report something like this. And I don't want to be the person that ends up harming that kid, I guess. And, you know, you could say that, like, this is still not a victimless crime. The coaches who are doing things right and are, you know, playing by the rules, they're getting harmed in all of this. I'm just a little bit less sympathetic to their cause than I am to the players' causes at the end of the day, because they're getting paid, you know, $700,000 a year if you're chasing these top kids at the least, more than that probably at the higher end for head coaches. And I am empathetic to their plight, but it doesn't make me less empathetic to the players involved. You know what I mean? It's just a really tricky situation morally and ethically that I think a lot of people also haven't really explored yet from a journalistic perspective. It's not that, like, we want to hold on to sources and we want to, you know, continue to have connections to break news. I mean, shit, like, what news have I broken over the course of my years doing this? Like, I've broken a couple of small stories, but I'm not trying to break news. Like, I'm not beholden to these people that, you know, give me access or whatever with what I do from a journalist perspective. That's not why I don't report this. The reason I don't report it is, like, ultimately who's getting harmed the most here. And I kind of thought that at the end of the day, for me, with my value, you know, kind of equation that I did it with, that it was the kid that would be getting harmed the most, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd ruin I feel like the players be the one that does get hurt the most because, like you mentioned, I mean, first off, they're kids. Like, let's be honest. We're talking about 18-year-old kids, 19-year-old kids, sometimes younger.
You know how fucking dumb I was at 18? I was so dumb.
Do you know how dumb we were at 25? And I'm like, subtract that smartness from 7 years before. Like, every kid at 17, 18, 19 is a moron. I don't care, like, if you win Teen Jeopardy, you're a moron.
Yeah, like, it's not necessarily from an intelligence perspective, but
right,
it's
like,
just
you're
from
just a dumb kid.
Yeah, like, from knowing how the world works perspective. You're dumb. Right.
So, I feel bad for these guys. I feel bad for, I mean, we can throw his name out there because everyone knows who it is. I feel bad for Brian Bowen.
Yeah, me too.
Like, he thought he was just doing a normal thing, and it's going to end up costing him a lot of money. And not only that, but a lot of, he's not going to be able to play college basketball, which, you know, I don't know the kid well enough to say maybe that's his dream or maybe not. But
here's the thing for Brian Bowen. So Brian Bowen is a very good prospect. He was a 5-star kid this year.
Top 15, top 20 prospect, right?
Right. Like, obviously had a very convoluted recruiting process, but Brian Bowen is not like a surefire, like, long-time NBA player. Like, right. I think he could absolutely get there in the future, but he's not a Marvin Bagley, a Michael Porter, a, you know, whatever elite prospect you want to talk about. Mohamed Bamba is going to get drafted super early regardless of what happens. Like, Brian Bowen is not that, and at the end of the day, he needs a place where he can feel comfortable and a place where he can be fostered as a player to grow his game and become the player that, you know, I think a lot of people think he's capable of, at least in terms of getting to the NBA and making, you know, tens of millions of dollars in his career. But it's not a sure thing, and that's where I come back to ultimately who's getting hurt here. And I guess to me, it was always the kid that was getting hurt the most in that situation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel bad I even feel bad to a degree for some of these coaches because they think they're just doing a standard NCAA violation, if that sounds
some of
bad.
them do. I feel no sympathy toward like Chuck Person,
right.
That's fucking lying to these kids,
right?
And
I don't feel bad for those guys. I feel bad for there's going to be coaches brought up that did something to just like like a pay for play type situation, which isn't the end of the world. It's a huge NCAA violation, but they're not like ruining live with a pay for play situation,
right?
But yeah, I mean, the kids, I just feel bad for all these guys, man. Like, people are starting to figure out who's who because it's not hard, like, by just doing a little bit of research between what was, who's player 1 through player, 13 or whatever.
Yeah. No, like, it's very easy to figure it out.
Yeah. And I just feel bad for them because they're just caught up not knowing any better. Like, I don't want to call them dumb, but they are dumb just because they're young.
Yeah, they're caught up in a system now that has screwed them. Before it was, thrown out into the public sphere like this, it wasn't really harming them. I mean, it could have harmed them in the future if they got into inadequate representation situations, like with Christian Dawkins, who, good Lord, if you talk to other agents about Christian Dawkins, you will get, even before this whole thing went down, and even before the Uber thing with the player who will go unnamed, that I think a lot of people know who it is. Even if you talk to people about him before, they were just like, this dude is an idiot. Like, this dude is just doing stuff like out in the open and, not thinking about any sort of consequences. Like, it is not a surprise that he is the guy involved here. And it is remarkable to me that this guy had the rope that he got from ASM, who's an agency that,
not a small agency.
Not a small agency, and not a dumb agency, I will say, either. We'll see what happens with them going forward because, Andy Miller had his laptop, I guess, taken by the FBI. They were searched or whatever. And we'll see if anything comes of that. But, those guys are not dumb. Like, I've spoken with them before, like, people at that agency. They're not dumb. So, I don't know what was going on there with, them allowing just such rope to Christian Dawkins. And the whole Willie Reed thing that came out of this as well with Christian Dawkins, where he was essentially negotiating Willie Reed's contract as a non-certified agent and gave Willie Reed advice to turn down a 3-year, $15 million contract, and he ends up with a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. Like, it is insane to me that this is the situation that has gone down. I mean, he is unbelievable to me that this is the situation. Before we get back to this conversation, let me tell you about Greats. This episode is sponsored by Greats, makers of the all-time greats, classic, stylish, and comfortable sneakers sold at a great price. Greats is Brooklyn's first sneaker company. They sell all the greats, classic styles, made the best for less. They have a wide selection of men's and women's shoes, versatile styles suitable for any occasion, tons of different colors and materials to choose from. Their best sellers include the all-leather Royale lace-up and the Wooster slip-ons. They just sent me a pair of these things. They are comfortable. They are awesome. They are stylish. They look pretty cool. I got all whites. I have not owned a pair of purely white shoes before. I'm a little bit worried about keeping them clean, but they look fantastic. You can check these out along with lots of other great styles at greats.com. And we've got a special deal for our audience. Save 15% on your first order with our offer code GameTheory. Go to greats.com. That's GREATS.com. And be sure to enter Game Theory to save 15% at checkout. Greats also believes so much in their shoes, they offer a no-risk return and exchange policy to guarantee that you get the right fit in a style you love. That's greats.com and use our code Game Theory and save 15%. Thanks to Greats for sponsoring the show. Now, back to the episode. Let's get to the next part of this, I guess, which is the Rick Pitino part, where Rick Pitino has essentially been fired. I think we can say he's been placed on administrative leave. From what I know, they had to do that and notify him so that in 10 days' time, the Board of Trustees can vote on it and fire him. Is that right? That's the way it works?
Yeah, it's a 10-day. It's 10 days for him, 30 days for Jurich.
By the way, like, sneaky thing, do we think there's any chance Tom Jurich, like, survives this?
No. No, because here's why. I'll get into this now as Louisville as a whole. I think they're handling this similar to how Kentucky handled their death penalty scare back in the late 80s, where they fired Hagan and Sutton, who was the AD and the coach, and just, hey, look, we cleaned house. And that's the NCAA said that. Like, hey, you made the proper steps of clearing out house. We're going to hit you with heavy sanctions instead. So that's why I think you see Louisville just say, nah, you're done. To Jurich.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't think they're going to get the death penalty, though.
I don't think so. I've been fighting everybody on that. Like, so many people screaming death penalty, death penalty. I'm like, they're not going to do it. Like, I mean, the NCAA is still about money. This is the most valuable program in America. It's one of the 6 or 7 biggest names. They're not going to...
In college basketball, yeah.
In college basketball, they don't want to give the death penalty.
That's what I think,
They don't want to do it. And they don't want to do it to a program like this. Like, if this is Texas Southern, maybe, sure, maybe. But, I mean, let's be honest. It's money. It's a name. It's everything like that. They don't want to do it to someone like that. It's just, I mean, that's just a business decision, which I think everyone should be able to understand from that point. Like, does anybody truly want to see Louisville get the death penalty? I don't think so.
I mean, except Pat Forty wrote a very strong column about it. I will say that.
I'm saying from a fan
standpoint.
And
I'm not hating on Pat. Like, that's
right.
That's his opinion, and I think it's honestly like an okay opinion to hold.
Sure, but I'm from a fan standpoint. Outside of like the dumb Kentucky fans who just laugh at Louisville, I don't think the majority of fans in America would they want to see Louisville in college basketball.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Like, at the end of the day, destroying the Louisville basketball program does not really help anyone, I guess.
No, it doesn't do anything.
Like, they have totally cleaned house now at this stage, assuming that Jurich's firing goes through, Pitino's firing goes through. They're
assuming
now under
Padgett's clean.
Right. They're now under a new president as well. Like, it's hard for me to say that like a school could overhaul their system as much as Louisville has. You know what I mean? Like, they've really done the job to get things in what could be a very sound place. Pitino in general, what are your thoughts? Because I think that I'm pretty... It's a complex spot with Rick Pitino because this is not his first run-in with the NCAA.
Yeah, I don't think it's complex. I think fuck Rick Pitino.
Yeah, I mean, well,
it's kind of my thought process on it.
This doesn't count.
I know. I love Pitino. Like, I think he's one of the 4 best coaches of all time. Like, I loved watching him at Louisville. I think he was. I mean, I thought he should have won Coach of the Year just because Mahmoud became an actual player. Like, he's an incredible coach, but the way he just throws, like, you can only turn a blind. I'm just sick of him going, well, I didn't know. I didn't know. And then, like, what really made me just be like, man, fuck Pitino, was him putting out the statement literally 1 minute before the David Padgett press conference on Friday and being like, I still don't, it was just very much like, woe is me. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Feel bad for me. And it's just like, man, just fucking own it. Like, I'm so sick of your bullshit now. And you know what? Like, I still, like, I think it's, like, I still think Rick Pitino is one of the 5 best coaches of all time, with an asterisk, because you have to look at the sanctions now.
Yeah, no, I will say that. The Pitino thing, where he continues to deny any sort of knowledge, while very clearly just being a legal decision so that he can try and recoup as much money as possible, because he had something like $50 million left on his contract, right?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money.
And, like, I get that from the legal perspective, but man, like, time your statements better. Don't do it right before Padgett is about to talk about taking over the program.
Who's your guy? Padgett's his guy.
Yeah, that, and then also like the whole like it wasn't me, Shaggy routine of like I had no idea what was going on. it's just absurd to me.
You're named in the report. Like, you are coach too.
Yeah, no.
And, like, that's confirmed by multiple people now, multiple sources, or multiple
yeah, I think Dana Jacobson
outlets.
got it first.
Yeah, she got it first, and then a couple other people had it or whatever. So it's not like it's just one person being like, I think this is Pitino. It's a lot of respectable people being like, no, this is Pitino.
Yeah, no, like, people know now that it's Rick.
Right. And it's just, like, if he would just own it, honestly, like, my thought process him would change. Just be like, you know what, he tried cheating, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
He's the worst cheater and an even worse liar.
I'm trying to think I think there are definitely worse cheaters even, like, named in this report. Like, Chuck Person is a bad cheater.
Yeah, well, Rick, like, if you're cheating, you need to either be good at cheating or good at lying, and Pitino's bad at both.
Yeah, no.
Like, he's the worst liar ever. Which is crazy. Like, you know, like, he was very honest about 15 seconds, which is something that you wouldn't think to be honest about. But, like, he lies about not knowing whether or not he, like, paid. Like, you just think, like, you would lie about one thing or the other. What he chooses to lie about is just baffling to me.
Yeah, no, it's very weird. I will say this, like, the reason that I guess I'm a little bit, like, you know, sway back and forth on Pitino has nothing to do with the personal stuff. I mean, again, I'm kind of in your boat where, you know, Rick Pitino's personal stuff is a mess, and I have no problem with that. And then, like,
that's not my call. It's not. I mean, that's just him being a person. Like, that's his life. Not his character.
And right. Like, the dishonesty that, like, permeates his being, it seems like, at least. That's certainly an issue for sure as well. Like, as a coach, though, like, he's very clearly an incredible coach, and I would imagine he's going to get something like an 8-year show cause or something absurd like that.
Yeah, my guess was 10, so kind of the same path.
Yeah, like, he's going to get a long-term ban from college basketball, essentially.
Yeah, he's going to be blackballed from college basketball, essentially.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, Woj reported, like, Rick Pitino had been, like, secretly sniffing around, like, NBA jobs, and, like, it took 2 seconds for them to just be like, nope, we're good. Sorry, Rick.
But the Knicks will hire him. Bring him back to New York, baby.
Oh, my God. We're going to talk about that in a minute, because I'm sure you have thoughts on the Knicks here. But before we get to that part of it, you know, you brought up Arizona to me off the air, and I think Arizona's in a really interesting spot here. You know, top 3 team in college basketball this season. I think pretty universally considered that way. A lot of high-level kids. Raleigh Alkins, Alonzo Trier.
DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, on DeAndre Ayton, obviously. And, you know, I will not be surprised if we start hearing some things about DeAndre Ayton's recruitment, given that, you know, there were already things out there about it beforehand. But I guess that you brought up, you don't really see how Sean Miller and the Arizona staff and everyone kind of at play here end up surviving. And I think it's interesting because we still have not yet heard a statement of, you know, defense or endorsement from the Arizona athletic department yet in regards to Sean Miller or any of the coaching staff. It's also very interesting to me, though, that I don't know that we for sure have connected any sort of money going to a player yet there, have we? Like, I think that, like, it's just been confirmed that the agent gave it to Book, but we don't have confirmation that Book gave it to a player. Is that right?
I thought there's at least implication. I don't know if there's confirmation. There's at least implication, yeah. Right.
There's definitely implication that was the purpose of it. But, like, I don't think we know for sure yet in a lot of these cases that, like, money for sure went to the player. And I think that's going to be a lot of, like, the semantics here actually are going to be incredibly important as to whether or not a lot of these guys keep jobs. And I'm sure, the FBI knows way more than what it put in those affidavits and put out in those reports and put out in their press conference. I feel extremely confident of that. The question for me, though, is, like you mentioned, do you think that Sean Miller ends up surviving this? Do we think that this, era of Arizona basketball, which is, I would say, one of, like, one of the biggest risers over the course of the last 8 years since Sean took that job in
I would
college
agree.
basketball. Because if you remember, that was a program that after Lute Olson left was kind of struggling along a little bit, was trying to get its feet back under it.
The Kevin O'Neal era.
Right, and Sean took over and brought it right back up. He was obviously getting a lot of high-level kids here. We'll see what we end up finding out about how he was getting them. I think that we can probably speculate that there may have been less than legal means in the ways that he was getting them, according to the NCAA bylaws. But my question to you is, do you think Sean Miller ends up as the coach of Arizona a year from now?
I tweeted this out Friday, and the more and more I think about it, I just have a gut feeling no. And it's complete guess by me. And you know what? I hope Sean Miller is the coach of Arizona next year because I like him. I like Arizona. I like what he's done there. I think college basketball is better when Arizona is good. But it's just a gut feeling, man. And I can't pinpoint anything to it. But, you know, what I kind of mentioned to you is they're the only school in these reports of having a coach arrested and a pay-for-play situation implied. And if it's going to come down, like you mentioned, to the semantics. And if that's true, and there is a true pay-for-play situation at Arizona, I kind of think they just say, you know what, we're gonna rid everybody of it. Same thing that I mentioned earlier with like Louisville. I think you see a lot of these programs, especially the ones that are already out there. We know the names of the ones already out there. They will clean house quicker than other schools, I think.
Yeah, I think that they're going to clean house quicker than other schools for sure. I think there's just so long to go in this investigation.
I agree.
These schools are probably, unless like you have a coach that, you know, has been sanctioned by the NCAA before. Like, it would not surprise me if Auburn moved on, you know, post-Pearl
pretty
at
quick.
some point. Yeah. Like, it would not surprise me, you know, in Louisville's case. Like, Louisville moved on Rick Pitino. I don't think that came as a surprise to anyone. I think, though, in situations where these coaches don't have a past track record of NCAA violation, that schools are going to move a little bit more slowly to try and, you know, tease out all of the details and see how this thing goes from a public standpoint, because we still have a long way to go in this investigation. And, you know, we're starting to see reports trickle out of Nike getting involved as well.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear Under Armour at some point, just because they're another major company with grassroots program.
Right, and it's worth mentioning that Under Armour has not yet been mentioned in this report.
I just guessed that I think it's going to happen at some point.
Right. Having said that, though, as we start to get all of these schools more and more involved, like in my opinion, no school should feel safe. Like, I tweeted out on it was Tuesday, I guess, that, like, you know, every coach in the country sweating while Thad Matta's out there, you know, sipping cocktails on a Tuesday morning in Hawaii, probably, and got, like, you know, Doug Gottlieb and Dan Dockich and, you know, all these people saying, like, oh, there are a lot of coaches out there not sweating. I was like, yeah, maybe not. But if I was any coach, even if I was sure that I was doing things properly, if I was as positive as I can be that everything I'm doing is above the board, I still would not feel great about this. And I would not feel great about what's happening. And the reason for that is that I don't think you can control third parties as well as, you know, a lot of people expect. Like, you don't know for sure if some agent went to a parent and said, you know, hey, here's $10,000 for your kid, like, to sign with me after. You know, there's just no incentive for the parent to come to you and be like, well, maybe there is if the parent's an honest parent, but in a lot of cases, you know, these parents aren't all that honest and just want to take what they can get from their kid being really good at basketball. You know, you can say that, yeah, we recruit the right kids and we recruit X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the day, like, it's impossible, in my opinion, for everyone to know every single detail of what's happening in their college basketball program in terms of the third parties. And that's where compliance issues come up. And I just would not feel awesome if I was a college basketball coach right now. And with that in mind, I just wonder how great this picture expands and how many schools end up getting involved. Does it end up a situation where the FBI can only pin it on, like, you know, the 7 or 8 or 10 schools or whatever that are mentioned in the report now? Or does it end up to the point where we're talking about 70 schools involved or 40 schools involved? And if that's the case, I just wonder if the NCAA can, like, totally demolish all of these schools. And in that case, I think that a lot of these coaches will just kind of end up being seen as, okay, yeah, they were cheating, and we're going to make sure they don't cheat anymore. But also, like, you know, we're going to give them a pass for this because it was so rampant and so widespread throughout our sport that we can't really police it either, you know?
Yeah, like there's only so many teams you can sanction from the postseason. Otherwise, you don't have the one event that brings you in money, which is NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Like there's only so many people you can do that stuff with. So, and the one thing to remember too is,
by the way, like I'm not advocating for this from a moral perspective. Like I'm just kind of saying this from a practical perspective, right? Like
right.
The NCAA, I don't think is going to sanction with postseason bans and scholarship reductions, like all of its flagship, like high major schools.
Right. And the one thing to remember too, because people are like asking me about this, is the NCAA isn't going to get any information from the FBI until their portion of the case is closed. So we're a long way away from the NCAA even knowing truly what's going on, what's being said in these interviews that with these coaches are having with the FBI, everything like that. Like they're kind of working with one hand tied behind their back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a process even to start sanctioning and things like that where, you know, I think you'll see some teams kind of be a little proactive in suspending a player that they know is kind of on this list.
Right.
But
from like an overall administration perspective,
right.
I just wonder if schools give a little bit more leeway here, and the NCAA itself ends up being forced to give a little bit more leeway here because, again, we just don't know how wide this is going to expand yet.
And here's the other thing that I said I would do, because I got this, I forget who I was talking to this about, whether it was someone on Twitter or someone in my personal life, but I said, you know what I would almost do is just say, screw it, and just play with everybody and let them figure it out later, because you can't really take away a title. Everyone remembers the games. Be like, you know what? I won the national championship. You go ahead, try to take down the banner.
Yeah, that's how I end up feeling about it, too. The problem with that is, like, if these sanctions end up coming mid-season for you playing a player, then you're screwed. Like, you can't just win a title. Right. Like, you end up getting banned for that postseason for having played an ineligible player.
I'm just banking on it not coming out that soon.
Yeah, no.
Like, I think we're a year away from everything really coming out.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, like, you can't take away a banner. Like, everyone knows that these North Carolina titles that might come down, or the Louisville title in 2013 happened. Like,
everyone remembers Luke Hancock going berserk for a couple of games.
Right. Like, we're not going to forget that Luke Hancock went berserk and just remember Spike Albrecht's first half against Louisville.
Right.
Like, that's just not the way
Michigan's
it works.
not national champions now.
Yeah, like, it's just everyone still remembers. Like, USC theoretically had that had national championships removed in football, right?
Right. Like, I still remember Reggie Bush.
Yeah, like, Reggie Bush was still a thing, and they still won a national title that year. Your memories can't go away, and that's ultimately what matters. Like, you can say, like, oh, well, the school doesn't get to talk about the NCAA championship. Yeah, but as a fan, these things happened. Like, they are in your memories. They are ingrained there for the rest of time, and you shouldn't forget them, I don't think. Like, it's just not... It's removing titles is the dumbest thing in the world to me.
I agree, because we all know what happened.
Yeah. Do we have anything else we want to talk about with this sanction, with like the investigation? I am sure that we're going to talk about this more. I won't mention this though. Like, I'm already sick of it. Like, that's just not, like, I don't cover the scandal of college basketball like some people do. Like, it's just not something that I get super interested in. I cover the development of young basketball players, and this does matter for that, to be sure, because it matters for the future of the way college basketball looks, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, I don't care about this. Like, it matters, but, like, I don't want to talk about it a ton more, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to change college basketball. I don't know how it's going to change. I don't know who's all involved. Like, some people were like, oh, who do you think's clean? Who do you think's dirty? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, if I knew that, I'd be subpoenaed. Like, I would be in an FBI investigation right now. But right. I don't know that. So I'm just sick of trying to, like, guess all this stuff. Because that's all it is. Everyone's guessing right now. Everyone's guessing. We don't know what's happening to Louisville. We don't know what's happening with everyone else in the world. It's just, yeah, I'm kind of over, like, this season's going to be awesome. I want to start talking about this season because it's October.
Yeah, no, that's how I feel, too. Like, I just want to talk about basketball. I just want to talk about, like, what's going to happen on the floor. The top 8 players
that's going to go in the NBA draft.
Right, and we're going to do that a lot more on this podcast. We're basically, I'm sure, again, that the investigation is going to come up and this is going to be a thing. But at the end of the day, we're going to talk mostly about college basketball on this podcast, and that's going to be the goal here. Before I let you go, though, I want to talk to you about Carmelo Anthony and this trade where he has now been dealt to the Oklahoma City Thunder. You being a resident Knicks fan, I want to get your thoughts because apparently just basketball broke while I was gone. You know, Carmelo Anthony gets dealt, Dwayne Wade gets cut and goes to Cleveland. This massive scandal breaks. Like, there were probably 4 other stories that just didn't get, like, headlines at all because these massive things happened while I was gone. I need to stop leaving the country is, like, clearly the lesson here. But having said that, what are your thoughts on this Carmelo Anthony deal? Because, you know, you are definitely a Carmelo Anthony apologist, and I am also one, to be clear. What are your thoughts on the way this is going to go down here?
The Knicks win the title running the international lineup of, we'll go with Frankie Smokes, Tim Hardaway Jr., Cantor, Kuzminskis, and Kristaps. 5 different countries, the UN lineup, national or world champions.
I'm in on that. What do you think of the Cantor and Porzingis combo? Because I think it's going to be really bad.
Oh, I love it. I like it from an. Here's one thing I say: Cantor's really, really bad defensively. At least there's a rim protector and Kristaps behind him now.
Yeah, but they have no mobility whatsoever now.
No, but who cares? Like, let's just get nuts. Like, I love it from an offense. Like, both are very skilled offensively.
Oh yeah, you can play 5 out with Cantor and Porzingis on the floor, and like have 2 7-footers out there.
Yeah, so we're gonna run the pentagon instead of the triangle. Like, I love it.
Yeah, no, I don't think the Cantor has gotten enough credit for his offensive game. Like, everyone just crushes the defensive game, and
yeah,
you know that's rightful.
It's the complete opposite on offense. Like, he's incredibly skilled. He's been polished since he was coming into Kentucky.
Yeah,
like he was polished offensively back then. Obviously, we didn't get to see it in college, but I think it's an intrigue. Like, I like the move. I wish there was a first-round draft pick instead of a second-round draft pick. You know, I kind of wish they could have got like a third team involved just to get a better draft pick because, you know, the Knicks are rebuilding, and the more draft picks you get, a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this deal for the Knicks for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, they need, the thing is they need help on the wings and they need draft picks, and they didn't really accomplish that at all. Like, you got McDermott and you got a second-rounder. So it's not like you filled the void of what you needed there.
Yeah, and like I'm still a little bit unsure on the depth of this upcoming draft, which is where that pick comes. It's going to be like a 30 to 35th overall pick by the time Chicago just miserably fails this year. But I'm not super sure on how deep this draft is going to end up being. Inez Cantor, I guess, to me, is the best asset in this deal, which kind of says a lot. In his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder, we're talking a 24 PER, 61.2 true shooting percentage. You know, a guy that is one of the best offensive rebounders in the entire NBA. Has certainly really improved his ability to occasionally step out and knock down threes from the corner. He did take, I believe like 50 over the course of the last year. That's fine. You know, he hits them occasionally. He hits them at like 32, 33%.
Right.
It's enough. I mean, you're not going to be happy with him out there, but he's at least going to space the floor a little bit. Really good post game. Total nightmare defensively. Just one of the worst NBA defenders in the league. Still has value, though. Still has value as a good sixth man off the bench who can crush second units.
Yeah, maybe you can flip him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think that's plausible. He averaged like 22 points a game. Right. 22 points per 36 minutes, and 13 rebounds per 36 minutes during his time with Oklahoma City. Like, he's a useful piece on a limited basis. Like, he can actually
maybe flip
play.
him for a couple. Ideally, you flip him for like a couple young wings from a contender.
Yeah, no, like that might work. I don't know that any team is going to give up wings for,
right.
Just what.
But you never know. Who knows? Maybe some team gets hot that we don't expect, something like that, and they push too much at the trade deadline.
Right, and the other issue is obviously too that he has 2 years left on this deal at $36 million.
Yeah.
Which I don't think any team's going to want to take on. Like, you saw the way the center market collapsed this summer. That's going to keep happening, in my opinion. Like, it's just really hard for me to see how the centers end up getting crazy money anymore. But we'll see. Maybe they can deal him. But whenever that's your best asset, a guy that is a sixth man making $18 million a year, I'm not real happy if that's my return for Carmelo Anthony, especially when you didn't actually reduce any of the long-term outlay to a player or to a team. So Enes Kanter and Carmelo Anthony both had 2 years left on their deal. They're going to get something like what? $8 million extra in cap space, but not really enough to make an awesome massive dent either necessarily. I don't know. I'm unenthused by this return. I guess the Knicks felt like they had to move on from the Anthony situation. They needed to wash their hands of it. But to me, I mean, that's good. There just had to be better deals out there.
Yeah, I would think so too. But I mean, I'm glad that they're going to try to build around Kristaps, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, and then Oklahoma City, I mean, I think this is going to work well. I think
so too.
Yeah, everyone's like, there's only one ball on the basketball floor. No, I mean, these guys know how to work with each other. They understand.
They've played together before too.
Yeah, they understand and respect each other's talent in such a significant way that I think that defaulting to each other in this case isn't necessarily going to be as big of a deal, especially whenever the three players offensively, their skill sets are actually pretty complementary of each other. Paul George is going to space the floor and knock down threes. Melo can obviously space the floor and knock down threes, as well as take guys into the post and create off of mismatches there. Russ is just going to drive and create and do what he does. I think it's going to be fine. Maybe those two guys end up getting a little bit frustrated with Russ holding on to the ball a little bit too much, but that's something you're just going to have to deal with Russell Westbrook at the end of the day.
They're still going to get touches, though. Russ is still going to average 10 assists a game. It's not like he's going to be an unwilling passer with these guys. I'm not worried about it at all.
Yeah, no, I'm not real worried about it either. I think they are probably the second best team, and then second best team in the West. I mean, a big thing about this deal as well is that it didn't hinder their ability to match up with the Golden State Warriors at all either, because
you can run, you can get real creative with your lineups there, because you can run, Russ, Carmelo, George, and let's say Roberson with
Adams,
Steven Adams, yeah.
Well, or if you want to do that, or you can
get really weird with Patrick Patterson when he's healthy.
Right, you can do Russ, Steven Adams, Paul George, Robertson, Patterson. You can do Russ, Andre Robertson, Steven Adams, Paul George, and Jeremy Grant. You can just have a super athletic front line with Patrick Patterson. Patrick Patterson is a super athlete, but he's at least tough defensively. You can have Patterson and Grant as a mobile front line is maybe the better way to put it. If you can get anything at all out of Terrence Ferguson, he's another mobile, quick-footed guy that you can use to cut off penetration from the Warriors. The Warriors are so good at creating mismatches with their quickness the Thunder can at least match up with that quickness. They don't have the same level of, wild skill that makes the Warriors still the very clear favorite with, just what they can do on the basketball floor, offensively and defensively. But at the same time, they do have the ability to at least match up from one perspective, and that does matter, at least from the perspective of trying to figure out, okay, is there any team that can actually beat this behemoth?
Yeah, because, you can get real weird and go real small with Patterson at the 5.
I think they will. Yeah, I think they'll do lineups like that.
Type thing, yeah.
Yeah. I think they will.
Yeah, because and then you can they can get real creative because you can switch a lot of things. You don't have to necessarily match up because you have guys like George, Melo, Patterson, Roberson, and Russ. It's not a bad fight. Or if Ferguson ends up becoming a better Andre Roberson, that's a pretty nice 5 to run out there to match up with the death lineup of Golden State.
Yeah. Also, don't forget you can throw out your designated floor spacer and Bryce Alford.
Yeah, just let him shoot wherever.
Oh, Bryce. I would like it if Bryce ended up making that team. That would just be fun to me. Reags, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I don't think so, man. I'm just ready for basketball to start.
I am ready for basketball to start, too.
The Giants suck.
You have to watch a Giants game this afternoon.
Yeah, I was freaking in Lexington, right in the end zone where Florida scored the game-winning touchdown.
Oh,
I've still never seen Kentucky beat Florida in my life.
That's a disaster.
Yeah, that was a fun ride home because that was fun.
Did you go with friends or did you go with Jen?
No, well, we both. A bunch of us went down, and one of my college roommates who lives here, his wife's pregnant, so she was able to obviously drive down and up, so we didn't have to worry about staying the night or anything like that. So that was a fun ride home because my college roommate and I sat in the back seat and just angrily yelled about everything that was going on, and it just sucked so much.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
I'm over. Just give me basketball. Basketball is fun and entertaining. Football sucks.
Yeah, at least Ohio State has won their last few games. Like, they've dropped 100 points in their last 2 games. But, I don't feel great about it.
Right. It just sucks. It's not even fun watching football anymore. People just get injured left and right. Just give me basketball where it's fun to watch.
Yeah, no, for sure. Reags, thanks for coming on. Tell the people where they can find your work.
You can find everything at barstoolsports.com. Go to Barstool U. We have I'm doing a bunch of stuff coming up with preview seasons and some longer stuff like that. So a lot of stuff going on there. You can follow my podcast that I do with Ben Brust at Fundamentally SD on Twitter and find it in iTunes and all that stuff. It's called Fundamentally Sound. And you can follow me on Twitter at Barstool Reags.
Also, if you live in Cincinnati, there's a live show of the podcast coming up, right?
We have 2 live shows booked already at Queen City Exchange in downtown Cincinnati. One is Friday, October 27th at 6:30, and then the other one Saturday, December 9th. That day is going to be nuts because we're going to be there all day. We're just waiting for the tip times of Colorado, Xavier, and Florida, Cincinnati. So we might do 3 shows that day, just constantly talking and drinking.
Yeah, that actually sounds awesome. I should probably fly to Cincinnati for that. There is no doubt that is just going to be a blast on December 9th.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, man. Reags, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on iTunes. It really helps us move up in the ratings. We'll be back on Wednesday with either college basketball stuff, NBA draft stuff, or NBA stuff. I haven't had a chance since I've gotten back yet to really try and schedule out what I'm going to do this week. But thank you for listening, and we will talk soon. Bye.